Hello, welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. Tonight we're speaking with Barbara Bix in conjunction with her Cerulean Arts Collective Exhibition, which is on through November 10th. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks for being here. So I'm going to spotlight Tina's camera here. So please tell us a bit about yourself and the show.
Well, I've been working in various different areas of glass art and glass mosaics probably for about 20 years. I started when I had 3 young children under the age of 3, and I needed to do something creative for my sanity. And I don't have any formal training in art, but I started taking classes. Back then, my initial classes were in mosaic clay art, and then I moved into use of glass and smalty. And over the last 5 or 6 years, I've also ventured into kiln-fired lost wax glass techniques, and more recently into flame-worked glass, which is predominantly what's on the picture that you're currently seeing.
Can you tell us a bit how flame-work glass works?
So you start off with a glass rod, and you use a small torch similar to what the jewelry makers use. And you basically melt the glass rod into the shape of a marble. I usually insert a piece of wire into that, and then either cut the glass or use a mold to shape the glass. The picture that is on the screen right now, the flowers on there are actually made out of clay, and those are fired in the kiln. And then there's different techniques of mosaic glass, using both stained glass and also cut glass and smalty. I also started using art paper as part of my projects, and I usually apply that with a special glue called Wellbond, and then place tempered glass over that, which gives the tiny little fractured glass appearance that you're seeing in this particular work.
So you mentioned smalty?
Yeah, so the smalty is Venetian glass that's predominantly made still in Venice, and that is cut into smaller pieces, and then you usually use what's called a nipper to refine that into shapes. And the yellow flowers that are raised on the segment that you're looking at, those are made out of smalty, and the flatter yellow is stained glass. And then these are all grouted. This particular work is a little bit different. Here I'm using kiln-fired glass that is melted into different dimensions, and that's how the flowers on this piece are made. And then the background pieces are really a combination of stained glass, and there's also some ceramic glass. The yellow birds that are on here, again, I cut those shapes, and those were fired in the kiln. But I like to use a combination of different textures and different techniques and combine them together.
It's quite an elaborate process to produce one of these.
Yeah, the works take a very long period of time, so I don't tend to make a lot of them because they can take, several months to put together and to, to make all the independent pieces and then to work on the actual design process.
I mean, do you have all the equipment in your own home, or do you have to go to a shop to do this?
So I have a kiln in my garage. I also have a torch that uses both a combination of oxygen and propane. And, I have an area to do the glass cutting. The cold working of some of the kiln-fired pieces I do in a separate studio because I don't have access to that equipment, and it tends to be, very expensive to own independently. So the flowers that stand out in this particular picture, those are done by a lost wax technique where you start with a wax model of the flower and then build a mold around that made out of plaster. The wax is melted out of the plaster mold in a large pot, and when it's cleaned out, cut smashed pieces of glass called frit are poured into the empty plaster mold, and then those are cooked in the kiln to 1500 degrees. And at that peak temperature, you often need to add additional glass to the mold. And once that's completed, it is cooled down to room temperature very slowly, usually over a couple days. And then these have to be cold worked. These particular flowers were sandblasted, and so I did that at a studio in Jersey that had that available. The rest of this piece, these are all smulty, and these are cut into shapes and grouted. There's also some stained glass, giving it depth. So there's you have different layering techniques.
And you're using a repurposed window as the format.
Yeah, I like using the repurposed windows for frames. I mean, I start out just getting the window into shape and sanding it down, but I think it makes a really interesting frame, and I've done that with a bunch of different pieces over the years.
And a lot of your imagery tends to be floral or garden or.
It does. And I don't know if I can tell you where that started from, but I do tend to like to garden, and that gives me a lot of joy. So my guess is that is the reason that I have a lot of floral imagery in my work.
So are you making reference to actual flowers, or is it all from imagination?
I think some of them, have some degree of reference to actual flowers, but I think it's more a combination of that and just my imagination of what will work well, with the cutting of the smulty and what can be done and what can't be done. It's hard to get really fine pieces with a nipper, so you're somewhat limited in shapes that you can do.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
And these three are all Milagros women of faith.
Yeah, so a number of years ago when we were vacationing in Mexico, I saw some references to milagros, which in English mean little miracles, and they're amulets that have been used for the faithful, both in Mexico and southwestern United States and into Latin America. And these amulets are bought by ordinary people, and they're placed at the foot of saints in small churches throughout that part of the country. And these particular milagros are related to sustenance and to parts of everyday life. There are milagros of corn in hope of having a good crop. There's milagros of different types of animals, including pigs and cows, that they should stay healthy and be able to give sustenance to the workers. The milagro with the heart, which is a very common milagro seen, can symbolize love predominantly, and love of family. And the images lower down include a mother with child, and also a husband and wife and children. And these are wishes for health and for happiness and for, all good things to happen. So the heart is a very common milagro that you'll see. And this third one, which uses the eyes, and the eyes have several different connotations. One of them has to do with healing, and it also has to do with watching those that have died transcend into heaven, and to make sure that that journey goes well. And it also has to do with curing different illnesses. So you'll see milagros of both the heart and of the lung and of arms and legs and the breast. And these are all hopes of curing a particular ailment that either the person has or a family member has. With the wings, it's a child that's on a deathbed and that's being carried and transported to heaven. And the idea is that the parent or the mother will make sure that that journey is a good one.
And so these are mosaics, but within a metal frame.
Yes. So I had a metal worker make the frames for me, and predominantly these are all done with Smulti. I also use some of the art paper with the tempered glass. So the faces are all made that way, along with the hands. And, there are some other components of the skirts. The main, what the women are holding, the main milagro, those bases are made with kiln-fired glass, and I discussed that technique before. And then those are cold worked, and those are the center of these women. And they take a very long time to make.
I'm sure. So this series of landscapes we're looking at, this is your latest work, I believe, yes?
Yes. So, again, here I'm using the latest technique that I've been working on, which is the using the torch and the glass rods. And these flowers are all made individually from a separate rod, and they're either pressed into a shape or they're cut with, again, starting with almost like a glass bead, and that can be pressed against a base and then cut into different shapes. And these all have a wire on the other end of them, and that wire is inserted into a foam base. So these start with a metal frame, and then I cut a foam base to that size. That gets inserted inside of the metal, and then the flowers and the smalty are glued on top. I also use art paper with overlying glass in a lot of these. And I like using different types of techniques in one piece of art. The fractured glass is the tempered glass, and that is glued on top of an aqua piece of art paper, giving the color.
So these are a smaller scale, which gives them a more intimate feeling.
Yes.
So here it looks like drawing in this one.
So that cityscape again is art paper, and that design is on the paper, and that gets applied to the foam board, and then I cut a piece of clear glass to go over that. The yellow section there that's plain is a rolled glass that goes over a piece of yellow art paper. And then the other components are smalty that are cut into various different shapes and glued very close together so that there's no grouting needed. And the rest is the flame worked flowers.
So when you're working on your pieces, how long can you go? It seems like it's a pretty physically demanding endeavor.
I usually will, make a bunch of different flowers and different colors and different shapes. And then I'll start with that, and then I'll build the rest of the components around that. And they get done. I won't always finish an entire one, but I'll have a general idea of what I want to do and sketch that out, and then fill it in at different points. I mean, the designs of the landscape are fairly simple. The complicated parts are the components that go within it.
So when you have an idea in mind, do you draw it out completely, or do you let the material inform you to the next step?
I start out with a general sketch, and then a lot of times it gets changed as I start to do it, depending on how it looks and what the feel of it is. But I try to have at least a general idea of where I'm going to put things, and then I sort of work from there. And, sometimes things work, sometimes they don't, but it's sort of a process and ending up with something that you like. I started using more red and orange colors in some of these smaller works that I generally don't, and it was kind of fun to explore a different color range.
Yeah, it's a little bit different from the rest.
This one is also a little bit different. I applied tempered glass over a really pretty orange art paper that has little, yellow and white dots in it. And the tempered glass goes into the flowers as opposed to be completely separated which is the case in the other pieces. So it's a little bit different on that level.
And are you like conceiving them like one at a time, like one leads to another, or do you have a general sense of like, I wanted to make this many and sort of plan them out that way?
I knew that I wanted to make 8, so I had, 8 frames made, but I do them really one at a time. And I don't have, designs made up for all 8 before I start. I really just sort of do one and get it to a place where I'm happy with it, and then I move on to the next one.
It's a really wonderful show, Barbara.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
enjoy doing it, and it's nice to have it up for other people to see.
yeah, everyone, is really blown away when they see it. So the show is up through November 10th. We hope people will come down to check it out. Everything's also available on our website, ceruleanarts.com. So thanks again, Barbara, and thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right.